again. I'm Anna Edmonds from the F-Suite magazine, Columbia's only magazine for female entrepreneurs and small business women. And I'm joined today by Earl Gregorich of the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, where he is a consultant there, and Douglas Lineberry, who's a partner at the law firm of Burr and Forman, and he specializes in intellectual property. Today, we're going to be talking about the business of naming your business, which can be tricky. And the first person I'm going to talk to is going to be Earl, because I think he gets into this a lot with some of the people he consults with. So when you're naming your business, what's in a name and what should we take into consideration? Just some basics.
Yeah, so when you're naming your business, the one thing you don't want to happen is if somebody reads the name of the business, they're left wondering what it is you do. You want it to be as to the point as possible, and sometimes that can be difficult because the name that you might end up with that is perfect for what you do might be taken. So that's first and foremost. Probably the other thing I would warn against the most is don't name the business after yourself. Putting your personal name on your business can be very dangerous for a whole lot of reasons, and it also can hurt you at the time that you might want to sell the business in the future.
Those are good points. So right along those same lines then, and I will lob this again at Earl, but Doug, if you have something to say, I want you to jump in. What are, I always tell people to beware of cultural trends and jargon. So do you want to weigh in on that real quick, each of you? Maybe with examples if you have one even, or why you shouldn't do that?
Earl, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Doug.
No, that's a really good point, Anna. Right now, everybody wants to put a hashtag and everything. You know, it's like, oh, you know, look, I'm a hashtag. What happens if Twitter ceases becoming a platform in 5 years? You know, all of a sudden, you've relegated yourself back to being almost an archaic trademark. So I'm with you on that, Anna. It is something that, you know, you don't want to use slang. You don't want to use something that's not going to have any sort of cultural significance in 5 or 10 years because our culture really advances fast. So I'm with you on that. You want a trademark to be long lasting. As long as you keep using it, trademarks can be perpetual. You know, look at Coke. You know, that's a US trademark that's over 100 years old. There are European trademarks that are hundreds of years old. I promise you none of those have a hashtag.
Yeah.
Interesting. Earl, anything to say on that?
Creative is good, but overly creative can be dangerous. Beware of the fact that what you think is a great word or jargon or acronym or whatever and means a whole lot to you and your business, it might have a double meaning in something in another industry, or the way somebody else would view that might not find it as cute as you do.
I think that's totally true today in our politically correct world, that there's all sorts of culture gaps that people are unaware of. And when you start using jargon and slang or double entendres, different things, it gets pretty dicey. And again, there's a time factor where they get worn out. The things that my parents thought were cool when they were teenagers are certainly no longer cool. They weren't cool when I was a teenager. So all that wears out. So
yeah, that's a good reason to go out there and throw it out in front of a wide range of people, see what their reaction is. You know, you give a name to somebody and they're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
Yeah, you might have hit the wrong intent there.
It really is. I mean, think about the usage of the word rad or stud. You know, when we're all coming through high school, boom, there it is. You use that now, you not only date yourself, you're probably considered to be a caveman or cavewoman walking around.
Right. I agree, totally. As someone who still has young people at home, you know, when they're, you know, millennials at home, their vocabulary changes constantly, and I'm trying to keep up with them, and it's only going to get worse, I'm sure, with time. So moving right along, Doug, I'm going to lob this one at you first. Because you are into intellectual property, that's your specialty. So how do you protect the name of your business once you've gone through the steps of deciding what you're going to name it?
Sure. A couple easy ways to do that. First, I would recommend a federal trademark registration. You would take and file an application at the USPTO, and you would have the name of your business, and you would also have a description of what you do, your goods or services. To do that, I tell folks, start off gentle. You know, a lot of small companies are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. The price of a federal trademark application depends on the number of classes one is in. So I would suggest focus on your cores first. But before we do any of this, let's not put the cart before the horse. We need to do a clearance search. Is that mark free and clear at the trademark office, or are there marks that are too similar to it? And not just a mark that's maybe in South Carolina, but maybe a mark that might be in Georgia, or a mark that might be in Maryland, or a mark that might be in Texas. You know, are we going to be okay on a national scope? Because that's everyone's hope, is that, hey, you know, maybe I start in Greenville, or I start in Columbia, or I start in Charleston, but in a little while, I want to be in Atlanta, and I want to be in New York, and I want to be in Los Angeles. So we need to make certain that, you know, like we said before, we've got a solid mark that is not going to be overly typified or overly slanged or anything else. We also want to make certain that it's clear. And once we have that clearance search done and we've vetted it, then we would file a federal trademark application. Now, if you can't get that, something I'll use as a fallback, especially for a company that's still small within the state, you can go for a state trademark. I prefer not to do that. They don't really have as much oomph as a federal trademark, but that is an option if somebody has a trademark that they really, 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 really want. And maybe we can just bide our time to see if whatever the conflict was for the federal mark goes away at some point.
Interesting. Earl, do you have anything to weigh in on that? Because if not, I just wanted to lob one more question to you that's a little bit different than all of these, but I'll let you see. Did you have anything to say about protecting the name of your business?
Yeah, I would say the first thing you have to come to the realization is you do need to protect it. I mean, the majority of the clients that I see are like, oh, yeah, I'm just doing this out of my house. I'm not looking to conquer the world here, so I don't need to worry about that. Well, you know, you can look at a whole bunch of very large companies these days that started out in a garage or whatever, and frankly, if they hadn't had the foresight to protect it, they'd be in a world of hurt right now.
Yes.
You know, that from succession planning too, Earl, it's a great point, because like you said, don't use your name. It's fraught with danger. But also, if you haven't protected these things, there's going to be an attorney like me or one of my brothers or sisters coming in to check on all this, and they will ask questions of, have you protected it? How have you? And if your answer is, oops, that's a bad way to begin.
You guys are so smart. So jumping forward a little bit, the other thing that I always think is so important when you're thinking about naming your business is you have to have a website. And how important is the name of your business to the URL that you want to have, your domain name? Earl, you can probably tackle that pretty well.
Yeah, ideally you'd like to have the web name match the business name if at all possible. Normally you can get that worked into a URL somehow, but it is getting more and more difficult these days to find exactly what you want. So when you're doing your initial brainstorming on the business name, you may want to include the URL as part of that validation process as you go through it. But that said, if you cannot, for whatever reason, get the exact name, you know, there are worthy strategies. You can go in and maybe get a URL that has something to do with the product or the service that you deliver, or the way in which you go about business, or something like that, that complements the name, or maybe it's part of the tagline of the name or something like that. There are ways around it, but ideally, yes, you'd want to have the name and the URL be the same.
Super. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this session up. We'll have some links down below in the YouTube description that you can hit, and we will come back with a future video and with Doug and Earl on different topics. Thanks for joining us, guys.